Okay, you Carpy lot, welcome to another CCS podcast. We're welcoming back Julian Cundiff, the most rock and roll man in carp fishing. How you doing today, Jules?
Good, yeah, great, yeah. Nice weather here for a change.
Is it? Yeah, you've had a bit of wet stuff recently, haven't you?
Yeah. It's not been great, but it is what it is, isn't it? When with the British, when it's red, they want sun, and when it's sun, they want rain. It's like it's
Never
never
happy.
right. Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
never right. So it is what it is. Complaining ain't going to change it.
No, exactly. So, Jules, what you been up to? What's going on in the scene over there? You've been doing a bit, I see.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tend to I fish. Obviously, now I'm retired. I'm fishing probably 3 times a week. That might be one overnighter and two afternoon, evening into dark ones, because obviously it's you can. I probably fish more hours when I was working than I do now. So, I could fish three 12, well, three. Yeah, three 12-hour overnighters a week. That's 36 hours. But you were fishing barren times as well.
Yeah,
So now there's a couple of waters I know that bite time is 12:30 while 6. So I'll get there at 10. I'll be gone for 7. There's no point sitting through. So uh, I might fish about the same hours I used to do, but I'm fishing when at the hours that bite time's happening. And as we get later in the season, the you have to fish longer hours because the bite times get less focused. So you might get bites just into evening, just after midnight, and first thing. Whereas in the summer months, there are hours that are just not going to produce, and there are hours that should produce. So yeah, I've been fishing quite a lot. Yeah, it's been good.
nice. So, where are you fishing right now, Jules? Are you doing a syndicate? Is it a local water to
I've
you?
got five. I've got 5 syndicates around me, and I'll always pick the right one. So 5 syndicates within about an hour from me, and I'll pick the one that I think's the right one for the right day. I've got one I call Jurassic Park. That's one where there's probably fish to £32. Nobody fishes. It's what I call my recharge water. I go there. The fish do not tolerate pressure. Chasing them round, stalking them, just completely spooks them. And you literally have to predict where they're going to be during the hours you're there, get your traps out, keep quiet, and relax. So I'll read, I'll do the most opposite to what I would normally tell people to do. But
Yeah,
I've tried it. You run round, you chase them, you stalk them, and all you do is you bat them from one end to the other end. You literally have to pick them off coming in because they're cute fish. So that's what I call my recharge water. So once the baits are in by 10 or 11 in the morning, unless they go off, I ain't touching them. I'm not walking around the lake. I'm not beating myself up. So that's what I call my recharging water, which I
yeah,
try and go to once a week. And then I've got probably 4 other local ones, which I'll pick depending on weather conditions, time of year. And then obviously I have trips away with my friends, we'll do 24 hours on various venues. So, it's just you fish less, but you fish smarter.
yeah. No, for sure. Well, we just came off of a few lads from the CCS. We made the trip to Manitoba, Lake of the Prairies, this past week. Quite the opposite from what you go through. It was
Yeah.
absolutely bonkers, mate. Just I think 930s for the week and 115 carp. It really is something special. Um, Now I'm going to get onto some rig talk here, Jules, because I know that you're all about the multi rig.
Yeah.
Is that solely all you use?
It's my starting point, but you base your starting point on what is happening. So if other people are catching on bottom baits, I'll go straight on bottom baits. If
Yeah,
I've got fish fizzing over my area and I'm not getting a bite, I'll fish a bait on the bottom. So it's just a starting point. I use it because I know it works, but I'm also aware of the situations. The cleaner the bottom, the more likely I'm going to fish a bottom bait. You know, I prefer pop-ups because the hook point is off the bottom, whether it's a clean bottom or whether it's a silty or choddy bottom. The more that point is away from the deck, I find the hook holds are better. So it's only my starting point. I would say 80% of my fish are caught on the multi-rig and 20% are caught on the bottom baits, stroke wafters.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm a big wafter fan myself. So, with regards to the multi-rig, now, what do you see the difference? What do you see is the difference between a multi-rig and a slip D? Because I mean, the mechanics are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I would think, unless you can advise me otherwise.
Well, when I tie a multi-rig up with a supple braid, it becomes a slip D because the D is of a supple material, whereas a multi-rig, the D is a coated braid that pushes a hook bait away. Yeah. Now, the thing about the slip D, which is accredited to Martin Clark, is that it stops the fish using the hook bait to push the hook out. Now, I think for every time that happens, that's once in. To push a hook out, the hook has to be in, and then they're using the hook bait, which travels down the slip D to get rid of it. I just think this is fanciful. I do. I mean, it's like carp sucking it in from 3 inches. It does happen, yeah, but it is so infrequent that carp are using the weight of the hook bait to push the hook out. If you're using a sharp hook, a fine pointed hook, and that hook has gone in, the chances of a carp being clever enough to use the hook bait to push the hook out, it makes people sound very intelligent. It makes them sound like they're on a different level. But I think for 99% of situations, I just think it's mollycoddle. I do. Yeah. I just think it's mollycoddle.
Yeah. No, I mean, as we all know, the spinner rig or the Ronnie or whatever is a huge thing and has been for a while now. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was using that last season and I did pretty good on it.
It doesn't tangle. The advantage is that you could chuck it anywhere because, in effect, it's a fairly stiff hook length and there is no twisty boom. There's no twisty bit to get tangled. So if you are chucking it out, it will never tangle.
No, it'll never tangle. Right. But I came across, and it was a situation at Last Mountain this year. I lost more fish than I've ever lost in a session on the Ronnie. There was a lot of weed floating around, a lot of little bits of weed. Now, I put this down to little bits of weed catching on that rig and messing with the mechanics. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. The problem is when people show you how good the Ronnie is, they either show you in the palm of the hand or in a totally clear fish tank.
Yeah.
What happens when you put metalwork into silt shod? It don't spin. It does not spin. Whereas broken braid, whatever way the carp approaches, it will spin and twist. And I think the Ronnie is great in theory. I think part of its success is that 90% of people are using it, so it's bound to catch. And it never tangles. But I do not think that, like for like, it's better than the multi-rig, because a multi-rig can spin at whatever angle, whereas that bit of metalwork, I mean, the Ronnie rig, in effect, is just a 360 rig or whatever. It's metalwork. And metalwork behaves beautifully in the palm of your hand, beautifully on the desktop, beautifully in a test tank, beautifully on film when it's never dropped in chod or silt. But you chuck it in chod and silt, and it doesn't spin. And I think it will cost you fish.
Yeah. No, it's quite interesting because when I first started carp angling in Canada here, I went straight over to the German rig, which I think is a great rig. Because I wasn't privy to the bait screws, because I mean I had a 9-year hiatus from carp fishing. Well, we didn't have bait screws back in the late 90s, I don't believe. So that was my go-to, the German. Well, after these cock-ups I was getting with the Ronnie, I decided to try the Turbo German. I mean, this rig here has been, I mean, it's Ronnie-ish. I mean, it's a spinner of sorts, right? But we're down a component, or we're down one hinge, and I tell you what, that has been fantastic for me. I can honestly say I think I've lost one fish on that out of probably 30 or 40.
Don't
Brilliant.
change it then. Don't change it. Don't
No,
change it.
exactly. That's what I mean. But yeah, the Ronnie interests me because, like you said, you put it on a sand patch, a perfectly
Yeah.
hard patch, it's going to catch a fish. But you start putting other things in the mix, I think you're losing.
I think it costs you fish. Yes, it never tangles, but I do think you don't get the movement of the hook, which improves the hook. But there again, there's a million and one things that go with that. There's the shape of the hook, the design of the hook, the sharpness of the hook, the weight of the lead.
Yeah,
It's there are so many components to any rig, and I see some rigs tied up that claim to be multi-rigs, and they're horrific. They're the wrong hook pattern, the wrong sized hook bait. They're fishing them, too far up. They haven't got the string. And I just think, no, no. The thing with the Ronnie is, it's. I'm not saying it's impossible to get wrong, but it is very difficult to get wrong. So as long as you clip it on,
yeah,
it's sorted. So yeah, and of course it's used by everybody. Like when everybody used baits over here, then of course most fish were caught in the olden days when everybody used tutti frutti hook baits in winter. What were the only bites that came out in winter? Tutti
exactly.
frutti. So it's it's like saying whatever your most popular car is that you see most on the road. Oh, that's obviously the best car. No, it's the most popular car.
Yeah. No,
So
that's
yeah,
right.
that's how it is.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, what is your hook of choice out of matter of interest?
My hook of choice is a Nash Twister size 4, or occasionally a 5. If it's weedy and it's hook and hold, I'll use it out the packet. If it's winter and it's clearer, I'll use it sharpened. It's a balance, because if you hook and hold with sharpened hooks, there's always a danger of cutting out, pulling out, etc. So it's that balance. Do you get more bites or more? Well, you get more bites. You get more pickups to conversions on a sharpened hook, but you also lose more, because I think you catch them in areas that they would not normally prick themselves. So you have to balance it up. The shorter the range, the more the initial inertia will be, etc., etc. So it's that balance. In the winter, when I'm getting less bites and I'm not hooking and holding as much, and there's not as much weed and snags, I'll go for a proper sharpened finer point hook. But in
Hmm.
the summer, I'll go for a bigger, I'll get less takes maybe, but I'm not going to pull out of any. So that's my choice of hook. I just find it works perfectly.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So, have you been abroad in the last couple of years? Have you been going for any of the real big fish you got over there in Europe, or do you just stick to
No,
your
no.
your
When I
home?
go abroad, I the reason I'm so passionate about carp fishing, and I've been doing it now since, well, almost 40 years of exclusive carp fishing, is I have to put it in a box from time to time and recharge my batteries, cycling up mountains, going to concerts. So when I go abroad, I want to lay in the sun, I want to read books, I want to swim in the sea.
Yeah,
I need to put carp fishing in a box for a week.
separation.
I fish, I fish so much that I don't. It's like saying to a rock star, when you go off tour, you go to concerts. No, no, I just go for a meal. I get it, but it's not for me. I enjoy fishing, but I also know not to kick the arse out of it.
Yeah, so it's more part of your routine, really, then.
Absolutely, yeah, it's part of my routine. And remember, it's not just fishing. I like to write about it. I like to read about it. I like to give back. I like to go to conferences.
Mm.
So I have to put it in a box every so often, and just keep the passion burning. There are very few people who've been carp fishing 40 years who are still as passionate about it. Very few.
No, you're not wrong there. No, it shines. Yeah, 100%. Well, you're one of
Yeah.
the old school, man. You know, there's not many of you left.
No, there isn't. It's weird. It's, blooming heck, there are very few of us, and there's less of us by the day. And it's if you pick up the old carp worlds from the late 80s, 90s, the old carp fishers, I go through those, and there's very few people left doing it now. Very few. Obviously some of it is burnout, some of it is sadly people passing, some of it is people waking up one morning and going, there is more to life than it. And I think that's in all sports. I think that's in all sports where people get obsessed about something and then wake up one morning and going, there's got to be more to life than this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned people passing. We lost a legend in the last week or so, didn't we?
Chris Ball, yeah. I mean, I saw him in April, and then he found out he'd got cancer and obviously passed away in early August. One of the most passionate men about carp fishing. It wasn't about catching carp or even catching his own carp. He just loved carp. Other people's fish, other people's stories, reading about them, collecting memorabilia. He was a big influence on me in that there's more to life than holding that fish up. He was just a fantastic a bon vivant of carp fishing who knew not to kick the arse out of it. Whatever, he loved it, but he didn't love it to the exclusion. I've got to be fishing. He just loved. He loved talking about it, collecting. He was as passionate about us other people's fishing as he was his own. He found out what made him tick, and that's why. Well, his first carp was in 1961. So you are talking 60 years of. There's very few that have. He's definitely one of the ones that's been going longest.
He definitely stood the test of time, but he wasn't at the forefront as a lot of the anglers. Is that what you're saying? He wasn't there putting it in your face all the time. He was always there, but wasn't.
No, he wasn't putting it in your face all the time. But people forget his contribution. He wrote for all the magazines. He's had half a dozen books out. There are people who are in your face with fish captures, but there's very little else to them.
Yeah, that's right.
If you wrote down the accomplishments of Chris Ball, you would go, wow. So often people are just simply judged on trophy shots, rightly or wrongly. But his contribution to carp fishing was ginormous, and his knowledge and his passion. He was not judged on his last fish. I have no idea what Chris Ball's biggest carp was. No idea. But I know what you just didn't. It makes, I love Terry Hearn. I love Dave Lane. I respect Jim Shelley and Adam Penning. I've got a clue what the biggest carp is. It makes no difference whatsoever at all. Nobody down the petrol station or on the 9 o'clock news is interested. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny sport in the grand scheme of things when you can see the wood from the trees. So the trick is to find out what makes it tick for you.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, God rest his soul. He was an absolute legend.
Oh, I mean, there's so many stuff for his. Chris absolutely loved girls. He was a one-woman man, but he loved women. He would always, no matter what girlfriend I ever was with, he'd sidle across, and whether she was 5'2" and blonde or 6 foot and a statuesque brunette, he would always go, a perfect 10. Not in a leery way. He was just the the smooth operator. Just a lovely man. Yeah. Lovely man.
He was. He was. Actually, it's funny. My wife, she's into making cakes, eh? And she made a cake years ago, and I'm going to say 15, 16, maybe 17 years ago, and it was a cake of a bivvy and a little fella out front with a cigarette in his mouth, a bowl of boiling. And Chris Ball actually got that put in one of the magazines. I can't remember which magazine it was, but he was the guy that put it in
Oh,
and did a little write up on it.
oh, absolutely. Of course he would. He was as interested in. He'd be as interested in that as anything else. I used to see him at the carp shows in the days before social media, really. And he'd have a little briefcase, and people would come across to him like he was a drug dealer and say, "Picture that. There's a picture there of a fish you've never seen. Keep it to yourself." And it was he had a briefcase full of pictures from people who were under the radar: Stevie Alcott, Johnny Holt, Dave Mallin, Peter Springate. Very rare photos, and he was as excited about those pictures as if he caught them himself.
Yeah.
And he would get the pictures out, and he would give you a story, and you could see the passion, which is there's more depth to him than the trophy hunter. God bless them, but my God, they're not that interesting.
Well,
They are the
the thing is,
drummers. They are the
Chris was all
drummers of the
about he was
world.
all about the business, wasn't he? He was all about the carp. Sorry, not the business, but he was all about the
The
carp
history.
fishing.
Yeah, I walked in his shadow. I know my stuff, but compared to Chris, it was the Mr. Crabtree and Peter,
Yeah.
but he was just a fantastic man who I spent so much time with over the years, and at shows at his house. And it's a sadness. And I was asked to do a tribute to it. Well, I was asked to write an obituary for him, but I said I don't write obituaries about friends. Obituary is what you read in the Daily Telegraph, that's black and white about what they've accomplished. To me, that means nothing. A tribute of the man I knew is I write tributes about, as I would write a tribute about my father or my mother, people I had an affinity with, whereas obituaries are about people who there was a distance from, a respect, but a distance. Chris was a respect and a closeness as well.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah, very sad, but there you go. Everybody goes eventually, right? He will be
Uh,
remembered by
I'm
lots.
led to believe. I'm led to believe so. Elon Musk, I think. Well, he's there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's going to be around forever. Anyways, have you got any big plans coming up for the next few months or season? Because I mean, we're coming to the end of ours. I mean, we're going to be shutting down in probably 6 weeks due to the cold stuff, and then all of our lakes are going to be covered in about 3 foot of ice.
Well, no, for me, this time of year, sort of September onwards, is when I do my longer sessions, my 24 hours or more, because that's when the weed dies back. I don't want to be fishing, hook and hold in the middle of the weed, the longer nights. So, I'll do much of the same, but I've got lots of trips planned with friends, things like that. It's nothing outlandish, just more of the same. Once you find something you really enjoy doing, it's like it's great.
Just keep repeating. Yeah, no, that's right.
Eat,
So,
sleep, repeat.
with regards to weather, I mean, weather plays a huge part, as we all know, in carp fishing. I mean, are there times where you look at the weather and go, "Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. I'll stay at home."
Um, yeah, there are times when I won't go fishing, mainly the summer. In the winter, as long as there's not ice on the water, I'll always go in the winter, because just one fish in the winter is, especially if it's snowing, it's great. But there are times, so in winter what time the bite times are going to be. It's going to be, first thing in the morning, maybe 8 till 10. Once the sun comes up and it's too bright and high pressure, it's not going to happen. Then just as it goes into dark. So yeah, I'll there are times when you just know they're going to feed strongly. But carp continue to surprise me. For every time I've thought I'm going to bag up and haven't, there's equally as many times when I've thought this isn't going to happen and it does. So to me, I just go as often as I can, and nothing surprises me. It's not a technical. It's not 2 and 2 is 4.
No, it isn't.
That's the joy of carp fishing, is that you never really know, and whatever you never really know, it's exciting, isn't it? It's
Yeah, it is.
it's that's just, let me let a little bit more light in. That's a little bit. I've not got a lot. So, it's that to me is the thing about carp fishing. If there wasn't a surface on the water and you could see them, I don't think I'd go. I could see them all day. It'd be so boring. And if I knew I would catch all the time, that would be great to start with. But
Yeah, that would get old pretty quick.
Yeah, it would get really, really. I don't care what it is, money, time. There has to be some sort of challenge, or some sort, not even challenge, some sort of surprise.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, because I don't know what your thoughts are on full moon fishing, but in the UK, when I used to fish, I never caught on a full moon, ever.
No, I think it's not the full moon, it's what the full moon brings in conditions. And I'm a bit of a I go when I can, and when I can't go, I don't go. I'm always worried that, okay, well, I'm only going to go fishing on good conditions. Then it's, well, I'm only going to go fishing on excellent conditions. I'm not. All of a sudden, it becomes a bit. There's never a right time to go, and if you go, yeah, and it would get very boring if you only went when you knew you were going to catch, because it's more. Every time I don't catch when I should catch, I always know that it's almost certainly going to be a time when I think that I've not got much chance, and it's gone. So to me, that's the excitement. I can't think of anything more boring than knowing fishing was predictable. It's nice occasionally to get into a groove, but you don't want it to be too predictable.
No, that's right. Well, I mean, I'm big on easterly winds. I mean, there's the Lake of the Prairies, for instance, an easterly wind, you'll still catch fish. You will still catch fish. It slows down. But at Last Mountain, if that easterly comes in, it's like a switch. Boom, they're done. And literally minutes after the wind turns, they're feeding again. That blows me away. That a wind can do that to a fishery. I mean, it's a little bit different here. The lakes are wide open; they're huge. I mean, do you see the easterly winds doing that on the smaller ponds, or not so much?
All waters are different. Some waters, fish. The bigger the water, the more the warm, wet, strong winds help. On the smaller waters, I do better in flat, calm conditions, red hot. And I think all waters are different and are all, I don't think that, I think conditions are like full moons. They are unpredictable. All waters, I've got waters around here which fish terrible on full moons, and some fish brilliantly. Some fish better in the cold, some fish terrible in the cold, some fish better in the red hot weather, and it's down to the pH of the water, the number of fish, the depth of the water, the nitrates. There is, when people say certain conditions trigger certain fish, but that's conditions with probably 10, 20, 30 other factors. Yeah. I don't think it's the wind on its own. I think it's the wind with 20 or 30 other factors that apply almost exclusively to that water.
Yeah, I mean, with pressures, everything else, I mean, we all know pressure makes a big difference.
Yeah, I would agree. Pressure does seem to make more of a difference, a rising and a falling. But on some waters, I do better just before it's going to freeze. That was the one thing I would say, is that most waters I've ever fished, just before they freeze up is the best time.
Yeah, and that's kind of similar here. I mean, just before the really bad weather comes in, I mean, they get the feed bag on and go nuts. I mean, the fish know what's happening, right?
Oh,
before they start to go into their lull, they fill their bellies. I mean, that's
they know.
pretty much
They know temperature, conditions, uh, air pressure. They know that well before we do. And
yeah,
you can. Nobody's telling them, what teaches birds to fly. It's not the mums and dads. What teaches carp, to breathe and things like that. And they inherently know, but they learn from each other. I believe that they learn from each other. I have watched smaller carp learning from bigger carp. People say you put a load of small carp in the water, it makes the bigger carp feed more voraciously. Not at all. My view is that when you put small carp in the water, those small carp soon learn from the bigger ones.
well, yeah, and I've got a theory about that too. I think the big carp sit off the edge and let the small carp go in, and the
Absolutely.
big carp learn what's going on from the small carp pretty quick too.
I've watched them. I've watched the small carp with a big carp, and if there's two small carp with one big carp, one of the small carp will go down first, and if that big carp keeps moving on, that little carp will also rejoin it. They are. It's almost a mother father. They definitely learn by. Just let me get some more light in here. No, I don't know. Here we go.
That's pretty dark still, Jules.
It's what?
That's pretty
Yeah,
dark where you just moved to. Oh, there we
yeah,
go.
right on. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
The old
yeah,
bookshelf. I can see it now.
yeah. A big bookshelf here. Yeah, so I do think that I think the smaller ones learn very quickly. I've watched them, and I've watched them. If that big one turns round, they'll join in and start picking food up. But if that big one carries on swimming, those little fish will. They might dip down once, but they won't hang around. It's all it's Mother Nature, isn't it?
That's right.
You
Yeah, no,
watch, you
100%.
watch sheep. You watch sheep on their own. The baby sheep will do what the mother does, and it takes them a long time before they decide to go. Do you know what? I'm doing my own thing. I don't care that she sat down. I'm going to start eating. You soon see, and I don't think they're any different. That it's that's how they learn. That's how they've evolved. If the
Yeah.
big one's not stopping, why should I?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously the waters we got over here are very, very wild. They're not pressured.
Oh yeah,
Um, it's a very different animal. I mean, in comparison to what I used to do and what you do in the UK, it's an absolute doddle. You bring your skills from there to here, it makes very light work of catching lots of big fish.
ah,
Um,
but it's not a doddle because it's a different kind of skills. It's a yeah, it's a different skill. It always looks easy. Oh, I could go to that St. Lawrence and I could bag up. Yeah, but you also have to learn to do X, Y, Z. It always looks easy till you have to do it yourself. And I know that. And when I was younger, I used to think, well, it would be dead easy if I fished X, Y, Z. And then when you do it, you realise it's a different skill set you need. It's a
yeah,
different skill set. So
sure.
yes, technically it might look easier, but you are required to do, a different skill set.
You're required to take a trailer full of bait.
Yeah, it's a different, and you're away for 3 or 4 days, 5 days. You
Yeah,
need to learn to live on the bank. You need to learn to, look after yourself on the bank. You need to learn to when to wind in and when not to wind in. So what looks dead easy is a different skill set. The best anglers make things look easy. And I fish with people, and people have fished with me. So when I used to watch my heroes fishing, I think, well, I could do that. But you watch them, they're smooth, they're practiced. And when I take people fishing, I'm sure that, they must think I make it look easy. And I watch what they do and I think, well, I can think of 10 things you're doing wrong here. That's, that it's only little things, but that's the difference between your one fish in a day and my 5.
yeah.
So it always looks easier from a distance till you have to do it.
No, you are right. You're 100% right. So, we talked earlier on about you going away and fishing abroad. Do you think in the next coming years you may consider jumping on a plane and going and experiencing something different?
Well, as I said, if I was going to do something different, it would not be France or Belgium or anything like that. I'm more likely to come to Canada than I'm ever likely to go. I couldn't think of anything worse than fishing round a lake pre-booked, winding in. Oh yeah, that last week at 74.2, and that's not for me.
No.
That's what I call. It's almost like instead of having your 3 days at Norton Disney or Linear or whatever, you're having your 3 days at some water in France, Belgium, or Germany. Horses for courses, but unapologetically, I say that's not for me. So yeah, I'm more likely to come across there to enjoy the environment as I am to enjoy anything else.
Well, and you know what? It is the adventure here,
Yeah,
100%. I mean, you could fish Lake of the Prairies for the rest of your life on a weekly basis and never see it all. You'll go and fish a spot, never see another angler, never see another bivvy, and it's just completely wild. You don't know what's going to happen. You can't predict what's going to happen. You know that you're going to catch some big fish, but we just don't know how big. It's so exciting. I think, yeah,
that's great.
I couldn't go back to those fish factories. Like, I mean, I
No,
fished Lance back in the day. It doesn't interest me in the slightest now. I mean, Gigantica, yeah, you can go to Gigantica and catch some massive fish. Doesn't do anything for me, you know.
no, that's the trick. The good thing about carp fishing is, like we said about Chris Ball, he found out what worked for him. And unapologetically, I know what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And I would rather sit on a Canadian lake with one rod and catch some 28-pounders than sit in a bivvy abroad fishing identical UK tactics, looking at white vans and having my breakfast brought to me. For me, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I couldn't think of anything worse for me.
Each to their own, right?
Absolutely. And that's what these waters cater for. I mean, my friend Richie fishes Norton Disney. And what a wonderful venue it is for certain kind of anglers. Anglers turn up there. They usually turn up in ones and twos. The first question is, are there any double swims? And then they go about spomming and rapping and, fishing pretty similar. And they enjoy it, which is absolutely brilliant. And it'll be a super water, but I'm 60, I'm not 25,
Yeah.
and I've got 35 years of fishing under my belt, not 8.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's right.
What suits you? So, yeah, you're more likely to catch me fishing one rod in Canada than you are fishing 3 rods in France on a pay lake with my breakfast being brought round for me.
I'm fortunate. My wife comes with me and she's a very, very good chef. So we get fed very well every time we go out anyways. But
well, that's perfect because I am the worst chef in the world. I would literally live on bagels, bananas, tangerines, and coffee. And I could do that for 4 or 5 days easily.
yeah. Well, talking about that, I mean, just the whole wilderness and how wild this is over here. Can you picture this? This is something that you can't buy. We were out last year. I actually introduced a couple of local guys to carp fishing that weren't aware of how big it was and what we had in our waters. Actually got us into a little show in Saskatchewan here, which kind of got a little bit of momentum, which is great. But they left, and after they left, myself and Wayne stayed on for another couple of nights, and the Northern Lights showed up.
Wow.
Can you imagine the starscapes, Jules? It's just, there's no light pollution. You can see absolutely everything. It's beautiful. So we're there, hooked into fish, and looking out across the lake at the Northern Lights. Now that is priceless.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? That you will continue. People who are in the game for a long time and are in the game not because they have to be, because it's a job, they are only in the game a long time when they find out what makes them tick. And what makes them tick can change through the years. People who are in it and then just don't really know what makes them tick, or what makes them tick 3 years ago now doesn't, but they don't know what to do next. That's why we're fishing at all the years we have. And you see so many people drop off because they find that actually either what they're doing now doesn't appeal to them, but they don't know what to do next, or it actually wasn't as appealing as they thought it was.
It's either in your blood or it isn't. Right. I mean, it's either in your blood or it isn't. I mean, I'm at the point now, I mean, I've got some stuff going on where I'm going to be doing some guiding for carp in our lakes. I get just as much of a kick out of seeing somebody catch a carp than I do catching one myself nowadays.
I'm with you. When I go, very rarely when I do a tuition for charity, I don't want to fish. I want them to. If I'm fishing, I'm concentrating on my own fishing. Exactly. If they're fishing, I can help them. I can't do both because when I get to the water, there's only one swim. There's a first swim I want to be in, and then there's a next swim. Now I either want to put him in the best swim, and I've got second choice, or I want to put me in the best swim, and then he's got second choice. So my view is, unless I have to do, if it's fishing with a friend and it's social fishing, that's different. Yeah. But if it's actually helping somebody, a tuition, then I really don't want to fish. I just want to sit and have a coffee, tell him, observe his fishing, give him some pointers. I get that fully. I don't want to sit and catch 8 fish and him catch 2. It's just an ego stroke. I don't need to catch any more.
100%. Yeah.
Honestly, it's and I do shudder when I sometimes see the prices people charge for tuition, and they're the ones with the fish in their hands, and then the person who's paid all this money has a smaller one, and I think, no.
Yeah, there's something wrong with that.
Mine. Yeah, it's not for me, that.
No, that's right. So, do you do much of that, Jules? Do you kind of go out and do much tuition? Do you have?
No, I mean, only when I do it for charities and stuff, to raise money for charity. Fishing is always, that's my time. When I go fishing, occasionally I'll fish with friends, but that's my me time. It's my me time. So I don't need company. And if it's not a social fish, I'd rather fish on my own. I really would do. So the tuitions is really for charity. Yeah. My tuitions, obviously, I've got my social media pages. I do all my carp conferences. That is my off the bank tuition. And so what I do, my world is so involved with carp fishing, so that I put myself in one of 2 boxes. Either I take myself out of carp fishing on holiday, bike riding, gigs, in the gym, or I put myself in the box of fishing on my own. When I go fishing on my own, I don't want somebody sat next to me for 6 hours, 8 hours. If it's different if I'm abroad, it's different if I'm having a social fish with friends, that's different. But my day-to-day fishing, my little box is me. I don't walk around asking people what they've caught, showing them pictures of a fish, asking them to make me a coffee. It's just like, they probably think I'm the most antisocial person ever. It's like, hiya, and that's my box.
That's what you go away from. I mean, I'm not fortunate enough to have these places on the doorstep. So I mean, lots of times when I go somewhere, it is kind of a social. I mean, and I enjoy that, but I do miss just going and bivvying up in the corner of a lake on my own and not having to speak to anyone.
And that to me is what fishing's all about. It's never been a social thing for me, but the modern world, it is a social thing. You go to most of these day ticket waters, they want company because it's a social thing. And there's nothing wrong with it. When I bike ride, I always ride on my own. Occasionally, I'll have a meeting with friends. When I go to gigs, I'm on my own, unless it's something that Roz, or maybe if I'm taking a guest to Kiss or something. But I've always been, I know what makes me tick, and I don't need somebody else to make what I'm doing complete.
Yeah. You like your own company. Yeah. No,
Yeah, I do. You know, I'm not. I am very. I'm a social animal, but you know, I don't need to go to the gym with somebody. I don't. I don't need to bike ride with somebody. I don't need to. You know, I've never been that way.
Yeah.
My mother and father taught me, if you only rely on yourself, then you're never going to be let down. The only person who can let you down is you.
Exactly. They were smart
So,
people.
you know, I was never a great football player or a great cricketer or a rugby player, because I was always, well, we're only as good as the goalkeeper. We're only as good as the centre forward tapping it in, or we're only as good as the wicket keeper or the opening batsman. So I was never, I'm a team player when it comes to work, but I was never a team player when it came to sports, because I can only control me.
Yeah. No, that's right. How long have you been retired now, Jules?
The 10th of March, 2018. So 6 years. Well, I know 5 years.
And you're probably busier than you've ever been.
Yeah, but I'm busier doing stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, I love my job, and I wouldn't have swapped my job for a job in the fishing industry. You know, and I could have done lots of times. I love my job, because then my fishing was the box outside my job. I couldn't think of anything worse than having to go fishing, having to do features to pay the mortgage, or having to go down to Raisbury, having to go to linear fisheries. Most people who have jobs in fishing don't have the passion for it. Some
What
do,
about
but
Friday?
very,
And you'd know.
yeah, yeah. I know, and I don't. I want to think that if I wake up tomorrow and don't want to go fishing, I can go to the gym. If I don't want to go fishing on Tuesday, I can go for a bike ride. You know, I don't. You know, I don't mind working for somebody, but I don't want to be working in my box. My box is my fishing. I don't want to lose one of my escape routes.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the music industry. I don't want to be working in the music industry. I want to look at them and go, wow, my superheroes. Or, you know, you don't want to be, it's nice to peek behind the curtain, but you don't want to live behind the curtain.
No, that's right. Music industry's a funny old game too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. It's great. But you want to peek behind the curtain, but you don't want to live behind it.
Yeah, no, that's right. So, what is going on in the UK scene right now? Who are the big names over there? What are the big fish at now? I mean, I know there's where I came from. Well, I live close to Ringwood. I know that there's some lakes throwing out 50s and 60s there now. What are the big
There's
waters nowadays?
Well, I mean, there are waters that have been stocked with fish that have grown on, like home fen, which will do 70-pounders,
In
but
the
they're never going
UK?
to pass. Yeah, in the UK, yeah.
Holy crap!
But the waters that are what I would call natural waters, Grenville is doing high 60s now.
Grenville, where's Grenville, Jules?
It's a created water in the Midlands, Northants area. That is, those are natural fish, but there's so much food that goes in. It's a big water, and that will probably do the next record carp. I would say that there are. You couldn't write down the number of waters now that have 50-pounders in. They're there everywhere. Even the linear waters have 50-pounders in them because of the strain of fish and the amount of food that goes in.
So what's
The
the
big
you
game
know
out
what's the
now,
roach pit got on it now?
I think they're lost. I think it's still got big fish, but it did lose a lot.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it lost a lot of the fish. Yeah, and the big names are really well. You have if you are a face of a company, you become more obvious in the media. But you have still, the people who are consistently still fishing for and catching big carp, Terry, Dave Lane, Jim Shelley, not so much now because I think he fishes abroad most of the time, but still a very competent angler. But I think really, Dave Lane, Chile are still those consistent, driven to catch big fish. You've got Tom Stokes, who's obviously a product of the Corder development.
Yeah.
Darryl Peck fishes abroad more now. So, there are so many of the anglers now that are, full time.
Social
Simon.
media has done that too, right? I mean, anybody could be a star with social media, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's a difference between, and I always say, okay, you're a star, but what would happen if you were moved out of that company? Would you, a lot of well-known anglers are stars because the company has pushed them forward. The trick is if you weren't sponsored by that company and had to do it yourself, could you? And that's where the cream of the crop, like Terry, Darryl Peck, Dave Lane, people like that, not only do they catch big carp, but irrespective of their sponsors, they're still out there doing it every day. Yeah, so there's a big difference, and a lot of not the very biggest names, but a lot of them are products of their sponsors' choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So we're getting to the hour kind of point now. We like to keep things to around the hour.
That's perfect.
It's been fantastic having you on again. If there was any advice you could give a new carp angler, somebody just getting into it, and I know it's very different here than there, but what advice would you give, Jules?
One, look at well, first of all, don't be concerned about people. Why look at what Julian Cundiff's catching when you're fishing? If I was in Canada, I wouldn't be looking at me, I'd be looking at you. So the first thing is, when you're taking advice from people, you need to look at the people who are successful on the water you're fishing or the types of water you're fishing. So that's the first thing. You need to eliminate the background noise. So that's all keep it simple. And when I say keep it simple, simple isn't a free line spud. Simple could be the multi-rig. It could be the Ronnie rig. It can be like you have something that works, keep doing that, and then maybe change things. Well, actually, a 4 is better than a 5. Actually, the German rig is slightly better than the Ronnie rig, although they're very similar. So you need to eliminate the background noise. Otherwise, you'll be totally confused. And number 2, so that's the first 2. Number 3 is fish the right waters. Number 4 is prep. You don't want to be tying rigs up on the water, unless if you're there for 4 days, maybe, and never leave anything for chance. Either the cast is right or it's wrong. Either the knot is perfect or it's not. Either the line needs replacing or it doesn't. Either you're in the right spot. It's either, to me, carp fishing is very black and white. Either I'm doing it right or I'm doing it wrong. Even if I'm doing it wrong, but I think I'm doing it right, that's okay, because a carp will tell me that. But most people are like, it'll do, or I'll change it next time, or I'll move next week. So that's the 4th thing I would say. You need to do it to the best of your abilities, and only you know whether you're doing that or not. So those were the, and so it's the right water, copying the person and their tactics who is successful, making sure everything is right, not getting swallowed in by background noise, and then fine-tuning it yourself. Maybe doing it. Sort of adding a little. So you're not going to change everything. So if maize is working, that's the way you start. Well, maybe I'll try boilies as well, but I'm not going to try boilies a different rig and a different part of the lake and 3 rods. So you need to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. So those are those are the mistakes I see most people make. I'll see people have one blank and then start fishing maggots, or have one blank and change bait firms, or people get so confused with background noise. Well, I've read that Tell's doing this on Wazing, or
Why is it
Tom
not working for
Makers.
me?
Yeah, you're fishing Brasenose. And Terry's fishing 4 or 5 days. And I've heard that Tom Maker's doing well over chopped worm and maggot. Yeah, but you're fishing a water full of eels. Yeah, you've got to avoid the background noise, as I call it. That's the big thing.
That's great advice, man. Very good advice. Yeah, I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head. Don't let the noise confuse you.
Oh, by all means, listen to it and evaluate it. But, I wouldn't be changing. Much as I respect Terry, Jim Shelley and all that, there'll be little things that I watch and think, well, Jim Shelley definitely walks around more than I do. He looks more than I do. I can use that. Terry Hearn fishes for longer sessions, so he's probably there when they come round on the second day. So there's things you can lose.
Yeah.
You learn from these people.
You take little pieces from people, right? Little pieces from everyone.
Pinch little bits, but don't, you need to look at them, their fishing and what they're fishing for and where they're fishing before you. If I go to Canada, I am going to be coming in with my rigs. I'm going to be copying you to a T. Of course I would. Why wouldn't I go on that rig with the maize and boilies?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I?
No, that's right. That's right. I mean, if it's working, it's working. Don't try and fix it, right?
No, yeah, the wheel is round. I'm not going to square it off. Yeah.
Oh, you know what, man? I'd love to see you over at some stage. I mean, we're not going
anywhere. I may well do. I may well do that. That appeals to me more.
I think you'd love it. Just from speaking to you over the last few times, I think I know what you enjoy, and you'd be blown away just by the scenery, by how serene it is.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, buddy. Unbelievable.
Brilliant. That's brilliant, mate.
And
well, thank you. Thank you for the honour of asking me on again.
Yeah, no problem at all. Well, I'm sure we'll be in touch again, but we really do appreciate you coming on. It really does mean a lot, Julian. Thank you very, very much.
All right, mate.
Thanks all for watching this evening's. Absolutely love it. We'll speak again soon, buddy. And you have yourself a fantastic rest of the season, okay?
And you, buddy.
All right, you take care, man.
Bye, mate.
See ya.